Welcome everyone to the TrAIN Open Live event with artist Gluklya and Dr. Djurdja Bartlett. I'll introduce Gluklya and Dr. Djurdja Bartlett in a few seconds. My name is Paul Goodwin. I am the director of TrAIN Research Centre, which is the research centre for transnational art, identity and nation, based at the University of the Arts London in the UK. And we're really excited today for our second live open event with the Dutch Russian artist Gluklya, whose practice has spanned many exhibitions and who has worked in exhibited widely in Russia and abroad. I'm just going to introduce Gluklya now, and then I'll introduce Dr. Djurdja Bartlett, who Gluklya will be in contact with. How the event will work today, as always with TrAIN events, there'll be a 20-minute presentation roughly from Gluklya about her work and the projects, followed by a conversation for roughly 20 minutes with Dr. Bartlett. And then we want the final 20 minutes to be more open to a conversation with the audience. So please ask your questions at that point. You can send questions in live captions in Teams. So please click on the three ellipses on the control panel and then click on turn on live captions when you want to ask a question. And also, can we just ask for everyone joining the meeting to make sure that your cameras and microphones are switched off during the presentations? So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the work of Gluklya. Um, she graduated from the Mukina Academy of Art and Design in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1995. And she co-founded the artist collective, The Factory of Found Clothes. And since 2003, she also co-founded and was a member of the very important artist collective, TrAIN, What Is to Be Done, who've exhibited all over the world. In 2012, the Factory for Found Clothes was reformulated into the Utopian Unemployment Union, within which Gluklya constructed situations that allowed for encounters among people from different social groups, from illegal migrants and ballet dancers to pensioners and students, unemployed young men and women who really didn't have opportunities to meet in everyday life. In 2017, Gluklya immersed herself in a new research project around the around the politics of integration and its implications for newcomers in Holland, in the former Bijlmer prison in Amsterdam. And this culminated in the performative demonstration, The Carnival of Oppressed Feelings. At the end of 2019, 2020, she began work on her latest artistic research in Indonesia, where she's been researching trauma, fragility, and rituals of the colonial past, and has found in them found them in the oppression to which female textile workers have been exposed in the local factories producing fast fashion items for the global market. And throughout her artistic practice, Gluklya really shares the collective's feminist emancipatory approach, the demand for equality, interest in micropolitics, emotions and sensitivity, poetry, and activist self-education and co-creation. And I'll just add that I saw Gluklya's work in the 2017 Venice Biennale, which was a fantastic project. So Gluklya will be in conversation with TrAIN's very own Dr. Djurdja Bartlett, who is reader in Histories and Cultures of Fashion at the London College of Fashion, as well as a member of TrAIN. And Djurdja has published widely and lectured on the theme of fashion during socialism and post-socialism. She's also the author of Fashion East, The Spectre That Haunted Socialism from 2010, and is the editor of the volume on East Europe, Russia, and the Caucasus in the Berg Encyclopedia of World Dress and Fashion. I know she doesn't want me to kind of give a really long introduction, but the last point I would say about Djurdja is that she is the coordinator of the Fashion Media and Imagery Research Hub at London College of Fashion, in which she co-organized an important conference, Fashion Media, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow in 2010, which was then published as an edited book, Fashion Media, Past and Present, in 2013. And she has her latest book, with an edited book called Fashion and Politics, which came out in 2019. So I'd like to hand over now to Gluklya to give her presentation and be followed by a conversation with Djurdja Bartlett. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, dear Paul. Dear friends, thank you for joining us today. Dear friends, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you so much, dear Djurdja, for inviting me, and Paul Goodwin and TrAIN for hosting this talk. Let me introduce myself. I am an artist originally from Russia. I was born in Leningrad in the Soviet Union, but at a very vulnerable age, I would say I have witnessed the collapse of the system and the rising of wild peripheral capitalism. I'm sorry, do you hear the echo or only me is hearing this?
Gluklya,
do you also hear that?
It is fine, Gluklya. Your
okay.
Sound is fine.
Okay. I would say I have witnessed the collapse of the system and the rising of wild peripheral capitalism. In 2010, I started to spend half year in Netherlands, and about 4 years ago, I moved to Netherlands in a more profound way. I have gotten a Dutch passport now and was lucky to win the studio. But I consider myself a trans-migrant living in both countries. I'm traveling around 3-4 times per year to Russia. This year is an exception, of course. I will give a glimpse of some of my projects focusing on the ideas of solidarity, dialogue, and overcoming patterns through the multiple fragilities. I would like very much receive your questions, especially about the latest project Care About the Sun, which is in a work in progress. This is one of my very first work, Slow Movement Toward the Freedom. It's the object with the wheels, which I was traveling through the city, and it's related to the idea of performance that was circulating in the 90s in Russia. I will use the strategy of jump in my presentation because I refuse to do it chronologically. So the second slide is a drawing of the 2020, which I did the first month of Corona, when our government just announced the rule of social distancing, and the name of the title of this work is 155 meter. I would just very briefly mention the topics of previous project FFC as they are connected with the project I'm working now. FFC, or Factory of Unclothes, was a project together with my friend and colleague Tsaplia Egorova, and it lasts around 17 years with pauses, something like that. So that is a memory to Poaliza performance, 1995, dedicated to all who suffered from love. Memory to Poaliza, it was our first publicly recognized performance. The performance was a reference to the story Poaliza by Nikolai Karamzin about a peasant girl drowning herself after being abandoned by her aristocrat lover. Mirroring Karamzin's heartbroken hero Lisa, we jumped from the bridge into one of St. Petersburg canals wearing long white dresses, but carrying the black dress between us, which we held by the sleeves. It was the host of Lisa, but at the same time the point of the rule of love. When we have discovered something, we were named the rule, a necessary alienation in the relationship between two passionate lovers. The experience of this performance changed our life. We have gotten so many confessions after it from people. Since then, we became very strong believers in the power of performance and the start of our collaboration. And we started our collaboration, which lasted 17 years. It is a work from which project with close FFC started. It's the letter to the grandmother. My grandmother, Anna Benedictovna Gitsova, was an academic with the first music education in Leningrad Conservatory, where she studied together with Shostakovich, and then the second education of her was biology. Her dissertation was on how to protect the Soviet fields from the locust, and later she met the team of scientists around Nikolai Vladimir Timofeev-Risovsky, famous Soviet biologist who conducted research in radiation genetics, experimental population genetics, and microevolution. It is a confession. Confession was very important topic of FFC. This is, I get up at 6 o'clock and read Hegel. It's a quote from the student of our project that time, Sonia Akimova, related to the workshop about the sverchusiliye, the over-effort leading to the sublimity. The action that should resist the mechanical, repetitive routine of life. That's failure resistance is an important hero of the project as well. That's how the utopian, the shop of the Utopian Union looked at the Pushkin K10 in St. Petersburg. It was anti-shop, of course. It was a long-last performance. Here we see the psychoanalytical cabinet of colors performance, which happened in the Apple in 2016, and it will lead us to understand of performances, which I will show further. The dress with the ear will lead us to the project with migrants, where ability to listen is maybe the most important thing. So I will jump now into 2017. And here is a project with refugees, which happened in Amsterdam in 2017. Dedicated particularly to the psychological connected with integrating any newcomers to the European society. I will explain a little bit the history, how I came to that. That's how prison looked. It is a corridor which is leading from the one tower to another tower. In one tower, the kind of people can rent the studio, and in another tower, the government placed refugees. My work with socially engaged art began in Russia long before I moved to the Netherlands in 2012. After I arrived in Amsterdam, it was clear to me that I wanted to work with refugees. Not only because I'm a migrant myself, but also because I pursue work that relates to real problems in our society, particularly issues of human rights and freedom. In 2017-18, for the whole year, I was renting studio towers of Buyers, a formal prison in Amsterdam. A year of workshops, meetings, and conversations with refugees, as well as with local artists, activists, and academics, resulted in the Carnival of the Oppressed Feelings, a whole-day performance on the streets of Amsterdam, and later at the exhibition in Van Abbe Museum during the Positions 4. Here you see the picture of the game Language of Fragility that was conceived during this project, about the words which sound the same and completely different meanings. Everybody experienced this, probably, who learned a language, foreign language. For example, dom in Russian sounds like house, it's house, and in Dutch it means crazy person. And that is drawing of the same game by Marwa Abud, the girl, the women from Aleppo. That's our team of one of the performances. It's preparation for Carnival, because Carnival happened after this research of 1 year. The main purpose of this project was to establish a platform of equality and diversity by introducing the refugees to the methods and practices of contemporary art, and finally to engage them in the public performance on the basis of quality. At the start of my research, I visited AZC gatherings. It's organization who hosting refugees who are waiting their house. There were some of the regular lessons provided to refugees to teach them about the social structure of the Netherlands and what they could expect living here. Strangely enough, nothing was said in these meetings about culture and art, let alone contemporary art. This was surprising to me. It felt as if refugees were not held to the same standard as Westerns believe they cannot survive without a breath of culture or artistic air. Another thing that struck me was the fact of placing the refugees in a prison-like environment. Much of the old set to control inmates architecture of the prison was left intact. There were still bars on the windows, no locks from inside the rooms, no actual privacy. Alongside there were the dirty corridors, unpleasant communal places, the piles of trash not cleaned in time, all of which were probably inferior to the original prison conditions. What crime had these people committed? What reason was there for this apparent punishment? Social rules have to be changed toward the idea that art is another necessity of life, such as insurance or house. Refugees need something more profound rather than just things for survival, if they are seen as equal and full right members of society. I think that we have to rethink the question of art in the society and to fight for a new position for refugees, to see them as equal members of society who have equitable rights with Europeans to influence minds. So that was my task. Of course, a very huge task, but I tried my best. And we did this carnival, which was a walk, performative demonstration. We walked from this prison to the center of the city in costumes that we produced together. And here is Murat. You see Murat. Murat, my friend that I met in this prison project. He is a Kurdish activist and writer who has spent 7 years in prison in Turkey. He came to the Netherlands to start a new life of freedom, safe relationships, and creative work. For him, the conditions of Weimar bias were particularly cruel. His experience in the AZC and the setting in the former prison brought back his extremely traumatic experience in jail. He couldn't sleep at night because the prison doors didn't have locks from inside the room. Instead, as in real prison, anyone could walk in just as the guards did in Turkey to pull him out of a sudden interrogation. He struggled to live in such conditions where the horrible experiences of the past were again close by. As I came to know Murad, I was haunted by this image of him in a cell of a former prison. I started to think about what I can do in this situation, and I proposed Murad to write a diary. Later, together, we came to the idea of the book, and the book of two diaries, my Gluklya diary, Murad diary, is evidence of the possibility to reach the fragile balance of equality between two people with very different backgrounds. So I'm very happy that project seems to be now coming, and I applied to Mondrian for that, and Charles is creating this project, so I think the book will be published. This is one of the costumes referring to the Soviet character Cheburashka, and at the back of the costume you can see, maybe it's not so visible, it's a name Amina. It's a name of the mother from Aleppo, from Syria, who cannot write and read, and she started to write in our workshop, and that's why we embroidered her name in the back of this costume. Now I jump to my trip to Indonesia, which happened a year ago, January, February 2020. From the very start of my appearance in Netherlands in 2012, I have conceived a dream to travel to Indonesia. But my dream came to the realization only now in 2020, as I received a generous support from Mondrian. And my trip to Indonesia was conceived as a trip to investigate point zero. I wanted to reinvent myself. And here you see the wonderful cover of the book of classical text Multatuli. I'm showing it because it was a significant connection between Indonesia and Russia before 1965. 1965 is a crucial year in Indonesian history when they killed all the communists. But before, it was a very strong platform between Russia and Indonesia. And the bond of this connection I did found there, despite the Americanization of the society in general. At university, they are keeping the historical memories and Marxist approach despite the Islam belief. So in Indonesia, I visited Jakarta, Yogyakarta, and Jatiwangi Art Factory. I have discovered a wonderful queer community in Jakarta, Pure Plus Code, and we decided to do something together. So we negotiate what we can do, and I pop up several ideas, and then they choose among many prepositions the burning dress performance. So together with curator and artist Ika Valentiani, we have constructed the situation to share the negative experiences that have happened with the members of the Pure Plus Code community. We talked and focused on the clash between the personal and the political. There were stories about sexual and psychological assault, the frustration about nobody coming to the open call, about the bullying in the workplace, about the domestic violence, and many others. I proposed to burn the clothing pieces that were acting as a reminder to the unpleasant experiences that people carry after the act of burning, liberation spirits came upon us, and we had an open discussion. And then I'm moving to Jativangi factory, rural area, situated in Majalengka, in West Java, between Jakarta and Yogyakarta. It's amazing initiative in the village, established in September 27, 2005. Jativangi Art Factory is a community-based organization focused on examines how contemporary art and cultural practices can be contextualized with the local life in the rural area. Jativangi Art Factory is a non-profit organization that focuses on discourse of local rural life through arts and cultural activities such as festivals, performances, visual art, music, video, ceramics, exhibitions, artists in residencies. Everybody can apply to the residency there. A monthly discussion, radio broadcast, and education. Here as well, I used this method of dialogue and listening, and what was experienced in psychoanalytical cabinet of Colored. And here in Jativangi, I also have constructed the situation for the focused tete-a-tete dialogue about the realization of your dream. Realization of your dream at the bamboo shelter for the good spirit. And we built this wonderful shelter together with workers, amazing people who helped me. The topic came from the community, because here you see, I saw the sentence about the dream in the walls, so I didn't want to propose something coming from me. I really want to establish a dialogue. That's why I used already existing kind of problem or preposition. In the context of the decolonization process, I refused to work with any topics that can be outside. I have invited people to speak about their dream and then ask them to draw it. And it was amazing to discover that interest in European psychoanalysis is present there in combination of Islam, Marxism, and psychoanalysis, and it's giving a very interesting cocktail for interesting context for the performance, for the research, and for the working and talking with people there. So I intended to leave the bamboo shelter for the good spirit, for the community, so that the inhabitants might have an opportunity to use it further for the development of the new method of Indonesian psychoanalysis. Tree of punishment, the drawing I made after trip to Indonesia. It's a drawing of the tree of punished by different ways women in Europe and colonized countries, including self-punishment as the result of the trauma of patriarchal oppression, in many cases going through generations. I'm combining on my drawing the image of the Middle Age masks of punishment which was put on women if they allowed to raise their voice or say something critical with the image. I'm combining it with the image of contemporary clothes, and some mythological characters probably appear to defend the psycho from the horror of reality. And now let me inform you about wonderful exhibition that is going on now in Berlin. It's still going. The work that the name of the exhibition is Disturbance Witch, and my work, my contribution there was a monument for modern slavery, which I was produced especially for ZAC, Citadel Sandow, it's the place. Curators Olga Vostritsova and Alba Durbano. It starts from Manifesto of the Feminism of the Universal Fragilities, but the text is it's not really. I reread it. I decided not to present it today. You see here the drawings and then the realized object. And installation consists of two parts. One is outside, as you saw, and another inside. And this invitation to participate in this show opened up two important questions for me. How we can frame the phenomenon of magic nowadays, and how we might coincide it with the politics. As I consider myself an artist, very often deriving from the intuition in my work, but combining the intuition with the reflection, and being a believer to the power of impulse and unpredictability through being actually atheist, Marxist. I face the problem with this topic. I face the problem with the topic magic. What does it mean, witch and magic? For example, I have discovered that I cannot be engaged seriously with the debates about magic, or when the artists are seriously telling you that she's consider herself as witch without irony, very serious. But because of the feminists of 70s who were naming themselves witches, I found the possibility to think about the topic politically. As I was just back from Indonesia, I was memorized the important encounter in Jatiwangi Art Factory, and the knowledge that I brought from this encounter. And that was about the garment workers who are working near the factory at this area, and how they are oppressed and how their existence is unbearable. It's really uncomparable with our life. So I decided that the protagonist of the clothes, which you saw, this clothes, is related to these people, to the garment workers of the global south. And I found it in internet, the fashion revolution movement, and asked Djurdja if she know about them, and she said, yes, I know these people, and she kindly connected me with them. And thank you Djurdja, so much for that. So another part of the installation is coinciding map of modern witch hunt and slavery. and the horrors of the clothes, reflecting the topic of the subversive witchcraft. During the research, I have discovered the map of the still ongoing false accusation of women as witches in 36 countries. Indonesia also there, especially Papua part. And when I have, and then when I have checked the countries where is work exploitation going, I have discovered that the countries of false witchcraft accusation and the countries of exploitation are coinciding. This fact gave me an impulse to create a character for my ongoing project, Victory Over the Sun. And when you see the map, it's written modern witch hunt, modern slavery, and combination of both. And the red parts, it's where combination is going. Red parts with dots. So now I have to finish because we agree that the structure is with the questions of Djurdja. Please. Because now it's 40 minutes past.
Thank you, Gluklya. Actually, I hope that you would find time to present your latest project, but at least we can address it in our talk. Do we have slides for Clinic of the Sun Care?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Okay. So maybe we can move to those slides. So I would like to continue this event and your presentation by referring to the concepts of compassion, empathy, and solidarity that run throughout your work from the very beginning, from the mid-90s, up to your latest project, this project, Clinic of the Sun Care, focusing on your explorations of your permanent artistic and activist concerns, from feminism to trauma and fragility. For example, this is my question. You start your Clinic of the Sun Care abstract stating, the idea behind the project is the decolonization of the subject of health. Could you expand on that statement, as well as on your concept of negative care, and indeed on some other ideas concerning the project Clinic of the Sun Care? I understand that this project is also closely related to the current pandemic, so even more so relevant.
Yes. Thank you so much for the question. Yes, the project Clinic starts within pandemic. We were in dialogue with few friends, and for example, Anna Bitkina is taking part in it, and my collaborator on the project Debates on Division. We were speaking that actually our community are so much defined by competition and individualism and the lack of care and all this neoliberal capitalist politics dividing artists, dividing people, separating them from each other. And there is a lack of solidarity, lack of in Soviet Union it was an artist union, the organization who supported artists. Something like that we were missing, but of course it cannot be constructed the same way as it was in the Soviet time. But the ghosts are merging, so we talked that can we imagine that it is possible to construct the sustainable community as an architectural construction of a kind of chosen family where the kinship is measured by the sharing common interest values, where we can learn from each other and also sharing the economical input, even ideally. And the idea is to start the experiment with a series of Zooms, but then we thought maybe it's better to go for a walk, so it's better to go and do some performances in the city. And as a platform, as a conceptual starting point of thinking about the colonization of health is the age of reason. The age of reason, one of the biggest representative of this is Descartes, who announced the separation of body and mind, that this is body, this is mind, and he also proclaimed that the animals are not feeling any pain, and that's why vivisection can be done and so on. And the thesis here is that the medicine in general is very old-fashioned now, because you cannot heal only body without mind. That is very, very good idea. So, and another preposition is that artists, a lot by their intuition and experiences with performances and all kind of experiments, they are very often using the progressive therapeutic methods, which is working with this separation of body and mind. That is obvious, and that's why it would be maybe interesting to present the ideas of artists from this perspective to the people. And because also the effect of the awful, scary, I would say, controlling apps that is coming to us, it was also the subject of discussion in this health topic, that if we want these apps, it's we don't want these apps. We don't want to be controlled so much. It's not necessary, and it's a kind of aggressive politics of the state. So that idea to re-examine the topic of care, what does it mean, and negative care came as a result of thinking about the topic of care, because the topic of care is problematic as well. It's ambivalent. You can, for example, overcare, like the mother who is too much caring of child, and the negative care is bringing to this care approach difficulty and sophisticatedness and realism, which is necessary to achieve when you're thinking about care.
Thank you so much. Also in this project, you are developing a radical new reading of of one of the most famous Russian avant-garde pieces, Malevich and Matushin's opera Victory Over the Sun from 1913. This is one of the most famous pieces, but on the other hand, and very well known, but on the other hand, as far as I understand, you are sort of developing a new radical reading of that piece. So I think that we would be interested to learn more about your interpretation.
Yes, thank you very much. It's really the project which is going on now, and it's a live developed piece. I was invited to take part in the exhibition in Istanbul and Pera Museum by curator Elena Sorokina, and she introduced me her concern, her thoughts about Matushin. Matushin less famous avant-garde artist than Malevich and Rodchenko and other constructivists, because his concept was different than the concept of constructivism. He was talking constantly about nature and about how to relate with nature and how to find the organic ways of collaborating with nature. And he was running an institute of organic culture with the experimental ideas, which sounds now very experimental and more relevant than even Malevich, because he, for example, proposed to connect sound and vision, and he was talking about the peripherean vision, that we cannot see only in front of us. We also have to learn how to look by your head, затылок. And here you see the drawing. It is written, учимся смотреть затылком. We are learning how to see with our eyes on the back, on our head. And nobody knows in the West about him, because everybody knows about Malevich. And when we were talking about all this with Yelena, I remembered this legendary opera, Victory Over the Sun. And I said, Yelena, maybe I should do this work related to this opera. And she said, yes, it's a wonderful idea. And then I started to think, and I read the libretto, Victory Over the Sun, and it impressed me so much, firstly, of the beauty of the poetic language, and secondary, of the desire to reinvent it. Because, for example, there is a heroes, and they're silachi, they're super mega strong men. So the response from feminist perspective now can be that the heroes are weak or vulnerable members of the society. And what these super mega powerful men doing in the classical Victory Over the Sun libretto and opera? They are turning, destroying the curtain. So my reaction was, okay, we should sew it back, and then they imprison the sun and put the sun to the prison, to the concrete prison, and they dig this sun with the roots. So all these ideas provoked to think about answer to this classical libretto with the other script, and of course bring the forgotten female figures there, because, for example, Matyushin, he have a great love of his life, Yelena Guro, and she never also was mentioned in the history, and she never was also like presented, and in Europe, in the West, nobody also didn't know who is Yelena Guro, and so on. So this kind of ideas arrived when I was reading this classical text, and also I was thinking, what does it mean, the sun? Because the sun for avant-garde artists, Malevich, Kuryokhin, Hleebnikov, Matyushin, it was four actually who worked on this opera, and Malevich square appeared first time in this opera as a decoration, the black square, and they took the sun as the symbol of everything which is old and orthodox, and also Pushkin, the Russian Goethe, the poet Pushkin, also was in this company of everything that they wanted to destroy, to start a new art, new life, new culture, new everything. So this idea of totally devastation of everything that exists. So that's provoked me to think about the sun as universalism and propose the idea of new evolution, which is how people can be transformed to crystals. Because the crystal is a very important protagonist of the story. The crystals was a kind of obsession of this artist this time. And Matushin, he drew the self-portrait as a crystal. So thinking about this possibility of new evolution, and time have to help in that process.
Thank you, Gluklya. Does anybody has any questions? Please put them in the chat, and I will read them to Gluklya. Any questions? We still have time.
Djurdja, as people are formulating their questions, can I ask a quick one?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Gluklya, thank you so much for a beautiful presentation. My question very quickly is about your absolutely transfixing drawings, the beautiful drawings that are absolutely beguiling for me. I wanted to just maybe talk, if you could say a little bit about the role of drawing in your practice and how it relates to the other elements of your practice, such as performance, costume, adornment, dress. I mean, are drawing the entry point for you? Are they the way? Are they forms of thinking? Are they kind of ways that you think about your subject, or are they? Yeah, just where do drawings fit into your practice? Thank you.
Yes, exactly. They are a way of thinking. It's a way of relaxation also. It's a way of meditation. It's a kind of yoga drawing, and it is a way how to find a balance, a fragility, because the term fragility is including the balance, the notion of balance. And it's also a freedom, because it's giving you freedom, mere freedom. And of course, it's a way of thinking. It's actually a miracle, because sometimes you want to go from kind of sound inside you, intuitive approach, and then during the drawing, and I think the people who are writing recognize it in the writing. I also sometimes writing, so you starting to write, and you don't know what is actually you are thinking about. And during drawing, the process of drawing, as process of writing, you might understand what is actually bothering you. What is the idea?
Thank you, Gluklya. We have questions coming in. So Elena Zaitseva asks you, thank you for the great presentation, Gluklya. I'm interested in notion of equality that underlines many of your projects. Can you elaborate it? Where does it sit in your latest projects related to magic, care, etc.? Is it okay? Do you want me to repeat it?
No.
It's okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Lena, for the question. The equality is, of course, a central topic of all projects, and it's related with fragility, vulnerability, and balance. And every time I'm reinventing myself according this position. I have no ready, kind of dogmatic answer, what does it mean? But it is a kind of liquid which is inside me, this equality liquid, which each of the situation, project, or work, performance, or whatever, I am again reinventing, again drowning into that equality, and it's very concrete. It have a very concrete substance. The face of this notion of the equality, in my case, is a concrete face. It's related with the concrete person, with the concrete situation, and I'm always keeping it inside because I think it's very important, and it can be described also through the inner child, which again, like, what does it mean in inner child? It's, from one hand, it's irony, but I think also it is equality, because whatever status a person have, he or she or we is always contain this equality as a child, and it's so many things that we're equal. For example, we are equal in front of the death. We are equal in front of the enormous fear of pandemic. We are equal in front of love, as we fragile also in front of this.
Thank you, Gluklya. I see some people typing their questions, but somehow they do not appear. I think Sophie Oliver wants to ask the question. Sophie, maybe you can put the mic on, and it seems Paul. Okay. Okay, this is Sophie Oliver. Thank you. This was fascinating. I wonder if you could speak more about the relationship between clothes and feminism in your practice. This is a great question in which I'm also interested.
Clothes and feminism. Wow, thank you so much. It's a very wide question. Any ideas how to narrow it? Clothes and feminism. It's direct connection, because clothes is something which you can throw out, and that's what many women are experienced, and in general the role of women in the culture, for example, also not equal with men, was now is of course better, but so many years we know all of us how it was. Then the relationship with the clothes with women are different than men, like a special type of men, right? So because many of my friends, for example, they adore to wear clothes, and the carnival idea starts from our studio, our house in St. Petersburg, where all the male friends, they wanted so much to try the female dress, and they were wearing my dresses. They were stealing dresses and wearing it and going party and dance. So I would say, yeah, I don't know what to add.
Any more questions? May I maybe continue just along those lines? Gluklya, the first piece that I've seen of your work was the dress which you showed at the very beginning. It was like pink dress, like made of synthetic, and that dress actually had that embroidery. I get up at 6 a.m. and read Hegel. And somehow it looked so witty. And also for me, I've seen it, I think, in 29 or 2010 during my research trip in Moscow. Somehow it was also talking about socialism, but also you did it in that project with your colleague and friend, Olga Igorova, and you founded that association group, Factory of Found Clothes. You presented some work from that collaboration, and also this was very important for me, and somehow because um, Russian women, rather the Soviet women, wouldn't want to wear second clothes, and Factory of Found Clothes wouldn't have importance in that time, but somehow the way you connected it to the period like of post-socialist Russia is I think connects it also not only to post-socialist Russia, but also to Russian avant-garde. Again, mentioning Malevich, I don't know how many times today, but actually he knew how to embroider himself, and also there were those artistic workshops at the beginning of the 20th century which many constructivists design patterns for those workshops. So actually many constructivist works were first embroidered, not painted, or where they went in parallel. But then it goes on all the way to perestroika. For example, Timur Novikov also did embroidery and stitching. And then also the work that I really like by Sergei Anufriev called Gorbachev's First Address from 1986, where he embroidered on men's shirt the first Gorbachev's talk when he became general secretary of the Soviet Communist Party. So maybe how embroidery relates to feminism, because also in the I think in the mid 80s during in the West, uh, Rosika Parker, who was feminist herself, she published the book The Subversive Stitch: Embroidery and the Making of the Feminine. So somehow there was that connection between embroidery, which is sort of very traditional, and the feminine, but also avant-garde art, which actually in Russia runs from the very beginning of the 20th century and actually up to today in your work as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's amazing question. It's very important because it's related with the phenomenon of forgotten stories and invisibility of people, and also the way of how people are working. Because obviously embroidering considered so many years like not an art, not an high culture, not a sublime. It maybe can be comparable with comic stories, drawing stories. Also belongs to the lower genre. It's not high culture. It's not belongs to true art or whatever. So the same with embroidery and all the textile wax. It was so many time oppressed, this activity of human being. And it's actually interesting to discover when, I think 70s, right, it became like uprising, and now it became even fashionable. But for Russia, it was exactly like nobody were doing it embroidering, because it was not oil on canvas, so it was a lower genre. And me and my friends, we always were resisting this all kind of prejudice about these things. And it was a challenge. It was a courage. It was a drive. It was interesting to do the opposite thing that majority of people consider as a high culture, high art.
Thank
And
you.
that's why I like embroidery. It's like you're helping the oppressed person.
Okay, thank you, Gluklya. Any more questions? Should I abuse my position and ask the very last question, which relates again to feminism, Gluklya? Your feminism, which actually starts at the very beginning of your career. And then connected to your project, which you presented here. And somehow I know that you also refer to Silvia Federici, because what is interesting for me when it comes to your work is also a huge intellectual curiosity and the level of reading which you do while developing your projects. So somehow for me, what seems interesting is how Silvia Federici, in her book Caliban and the Witch, how she somehow presents, addresses the history of the body in transition to capitalism, and then witch woman who was supposed to be witch is a rebel body and it has to be controlled or destroyed. And somehow you transfer that discourse to like global capitalism in Indonesia, because I know more about tragic stories that you've learned there about those women who were really abused in those in that factory which actually produced fast fashion for the global market. And then you developed it after returning from Indonesia. You developed it into that project in Berlin, or rather Potsdam, Monument for Modern Slavery. So the whole process, but very briefly, because we're about to finish, somehow from starting with theory, and then, as Paul said, and you confirmed how important it is to you, moving to drawing, and then somehow finding connections between theory, drawing, research, primary sources, and so on.
Yes, and thank you. It is very multi-layered question. What line or what layer you prefer that I will develop, dear Djurdja?
I just, maybe that was a comment. How you somehow start with reading Silvia Federici, and then have actually theoretical work about women who were supposed to be witches, but actually this is the expression of Middle Ages moving into capitalist system. And then you arrive to Indonesia and you do your own research and you find actually the tape, the women who are equally in danger, almost like witches. And then you come back from Indonesia and you do that great work. And actually those women, I think, which you presented from that exhibition in Potsdam, those clothes are on stakes, like witches were on stakes. Is it right?
Yes. Yes, yes. Yes,
Okay.
it's related with witches. But then I was thinking, who is witches now? Because I don't want to stay in only in historical, because exhibition and curators, Olga and Alba, they also were saying we are not doing the historical exhibition. So that's why I was thinking, who is witch now? And for me, the question was framed as who is the most victim now? Who is the most because witches at their time, they were most radical oppressed creatures ever. And they were also not only women, it was also children who were executed as witches. It was dogs, cats, it was men also. So this witch was a frame of total oppression and victimization, and like Jews in Second World War, you know. So this scapegoat victim, I was interested. Who is the scapegoat figure now? Yeah, because I can do the work about precarious artists or whatever, also struggling and oppressed, but not so much as global South garment workers.
Okay.
And then I found this map about 36 countries that that we can't still going. And for me, it's still research. I supposed to go back to Indonesia and to discover that how they are now executing and torturing these women, and why, and in what way they think that they are witches. Because if you are doing something transgressive, you easily can become witch. You know, even now in 36 countries.
This is true. That map was really fascinating. This is like a good point that we finish this event. Thank you so much, Gluklya, for this wonderful presentation. Thank you everybody for attending, and see you at the next TrAIN event. Paul, do you know which one will it be, or Evelina?
Thank you so much, both. I just put in the text, that was a fantastic presentation, Gluklya. Thank you so much. I said that your work is visually stunning, intellectually multi-layered, and politically astute. And also, Djurdja, I said that your questions were really great, and it was really apparent that you had such attentive readings of Gluklya's works. It was a wonderful event. To answer your question, this is the last event of the year, so thank you so much. We'll be continuing with the program in January, so please look out, and we'll be posting soon on the TrAIN website all the new events. But thank you so much, both of you. It was a wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us and hosting us. Okay,
Thank you so much.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.